This is how 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found on January 11, 2013. Head first, rolled up in a mat in his high school gym. Investigators have deemed it an accident, but his family and many others believe that he was murdered and there is a cover-up happening. Until this day, they're still fighting for justice. This story has so many twists and turns. It's been closed, opened, closed, and reopened again by state and federal investigators. I'm going to share with you the timeline, as well as what police say happened, what his family says actually happened, as well as a recent update that dropped just last month, February 2025. And I want to know what you think. I'm OhShutUpTrisha, and this is the story of Kendrick Johnson. Let's get into it. It was January 10th, 2013, when Jacqueline Johnson called 911 after her son, 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson, did not come home from school. It was unlike him. She was really concerned.
911, where's your emergency?
Yes, I'm calling. My son had come home from school today, and he still haven't got here.
Hey, what's your son's name?
Kendrick Johnson.
Police tried to tell Kendrick's mom that he was probably just out kicking it, which sounds really familiar. Remember when I covered Kanika Jenkins' case and her mom called to report her missing and the cops tried to tell her the same thing? Well, just like Kanika's mom, Kendrick's mom wasn't buying it. She knew something was up.
The first thing the officer would say was, he's probably out with some fast-tailed girl. And I was like, no, Kendrick knows that I don't play about school nights, period.
Kendrick, a sophomore at Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia, was said to be a really sweet and funny young man. He played 3 sports and had dreams of becoming a professional football player. He also came from a really loving family who had roots in Valdosta. His mom and dad were born and raised there. He was also the youngest of his siblings, who all had the initials KJ, just like him. So needless to say, when he didn't come home, everyone's antennas were up. They searched and searched and searched for him. And when he still didn't turn up overnight, they were at that school by 8 a.m. looking for him, the last place they had known him to be. So the family now is talking to front desk staff as well as responding officers, and they reportedly were starting to print out flyers as well as ask students who were around if they had heard from Kendrick or saw Kendrick. When at 10:30, students who were in the gym for a gym class were sitting on the bleachers when they made a grim discovery. They reportedly looked over and saw 2 sock-covered feet just below the top of a gym mat. So the students immediately alert their gym teacher, and it said that at first they thought this person maybe was playing a trick on them, but they soon realized that wasn't the case because this person was not responding, and they reportedly started to get an overwhelming scent of decomposition. So the students and the teacher run over to the mat and they tip it over. And that's when they realize this person is not alive. They immediately call 911.
From the Lowndes High School now. There's a dead body out here.
Okay, where at, sir?
Lowndes High School in the old gym.
So if you remember, I had mentioned earlier that some cops were already at the school responding to the missing persons report. So they reportedly were able to get to the gym within less than 5 minutes of that 911 call. So I'm going to read the initial report to you where they describe what they responded to. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Instead, I'm going to read the parts about how they found the scene as well as how they found Kendrick. But feel free to pause if you want to read it. On January 11, 2013 at 10:32, I was dispatched to the old gym for a code blue. At 10:35 a.m., I and Deputy Kerry Quinn arrived. I observed students running out of the gym and overheard them saying that there was a dead body. As I approached the southwest corner of the gym, I detected a mild odor of a corpse. So I'm going to skip so now we can get to how they found Kendrick. In the center of the row pointing north, I observed 2 feet with socks wearing denim jeans. We had to move 3 mats to get to the other end of that cheerleader mat. In the center of the row facing south, I observed a black male torso and head wearing white, exposed down to his rib cage. Both arms partially obstructed the face and were moderately stiff. The facial area was severely disfigured and swollen. The only identifying feature of the victim that I observed was the long dreadlocks. So more police as well as other first responders arrive on scene to investigate. But the coroner didn't arrive on scene until maybe 5 to 6 hours later. And according to Georgia law, the coroner is supposed to be notified as soon as a body is found. Many question why it took so long for them to notify the coroner. And even in the coroner's report, he speaks to a little bit of the sketchiness. I'm going to read that report to you. Tell me what you think. So in the coroner's report, he notes that the scene was compromised. He says, and I quote, "I was not notified of this death until 15:45 hours. The investigation climate was very poor to worse when I arrived on the scene. The body had been noticeably moved. The scene had been compromised, and there was no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene." So now let's get back to Kendrick's family. So as I had mentioned, some of his family members were on the scene. However, they were not able to view his body. In fact, it took them holding a press conference about 2 days later, demanding that his body not leave the county before they're able to lay eyes on him. And that's when they reportedly received a phone call telling them to come to the crime lab where they could see their son. And that is where I am sure the fight for the truth began, because reportedly, Kendrick's dad took one look at him and knew that he had been in a fight. He says that one side of Kendrick's face was more swollen. And I'm not going to show the picture here, but if you search, you'll see it. Let me know what you think. Now, even despite the family's doubts, the investigators said that this was just an accident, that there was no foul play. A determination many believe they made a little too quickly and was frankly just false. They say that this all happened because of sneakers. So let me back up and give you a little bit more context. So reportedly at Lowndes High School, students were required to pay to have a locker. So instead, some students, including Kendrick, would store their shoes in these gym mats. But usually, students would tip them over to retrieve their items. Investigators say that Kendrick and a friend shared a pair of gym sneakers and that they would often put those gym sneakers in the mats. They say that the day that Kendrick passed away, he was actually going into the mat to retrieve those sneakers. And the reason why he went into the mat rather than tipping it over, as I mentioned students normally did, was because those mats had been moved. The kids had just come back from Christmas break, so a lot of things were not in the place they normally were. So they say that Kendrick went into the mat and he ultimately got stuck and then suffocated. But people have questions about that story because of the way the sneakers were found. And it wasn't just one pair, there were a few. So this black and white sneaker is one of the sneakers that Kendrick was allegedly reaching for. One was found in front of the mat and the other was found by his head. But get this, some say it was kind of strange because when Kendrick was found, there was a pool of blood and vomit on the ground because he was upside down for quite some time. But there was no blood or vomit on that sneaker. Some question how. How was it not also contaminated? So take a look at this black sneaker with orange laces. It was reportedly also found on the scene, but it did not belong to Kendrick. Now take a look a little closer. Do you see that substance on it? Many people thought that was blood. So investigators claim that they did test it and it was not Kendrick's blood. And because of that, they did not bag it and take it into their investigation any further. Now this Hollister shirt was also found on the scene and it reportedly also had some type of substance on it that many thought was maybe blood. But again, investigators say they tested it and it wasn't Kendrick's. And because it wasn't Kendrick's, they reportedly did not look into it any further. Now, take a look at this wall. This wall was in the gym not too far from where Kendrick was found. And it looks like what is maybe blood on it. So investigators also tested that and they say, well, it wasn't Kendrick's blood. And yes, you guessed it, they did not look into it any further. So now let's get into the mat. So as we know, Kendrick was found head first in the gym mat with one arm stretched above his head and the other down around his waist. Now, listen to this. The mat was approximately 6 feet tall, and because the mat was rolled up with a band around it, the opening that Kendrick was found in was about 14 inches wide. Okay, are you following? Knowing the mat was that size, many speculate, well, how did Kendrick even fit? Because you see, Kendrick stood about 5'10", and his shoulder width was about 19 inches wide. That seems a little too big to fit into that mat comfortably. Here's a photo of his dad demonstrating the difficulty. So at this point, in addition to the FBI looking into this case to find out if there were any civil rights violated, Kendrick's family also started their own independent investigation. And that's when they saw something else that was a little odd. And it had to do with Kendrick's lungs. So take a look at this autopsy report performed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It notes that the right and left lungs weighed 260 and 240 grams respectively. Well, according to the pathologist that was working on the independent investigation for the Johnson family, that doesn't make sense. Because if he truly died of suffocation, then the lungs should have weighed a little bit more because they would have filled with fluid. Are you following? So what ended up happening after that is the family exhumed Kendrick's body because they wanted to have a second autopsy done. They wanted to look into the lungs to get a better understanding. Well, you'll never believe this. When they exhumed Kendrick's body, they weren't able to look at the lungs because all of his organs were removed. Yes, all of his organs were removed. And his body was instead stuffed with newspaper. Newspaper. I mean, you could only imagine how the parents felt because even when I learned this, I could not believe it because the parents had no idea. So they buried their son thinking that they were burying all of him, only to find that his organs were missing without their consent or without even being told. So they, of course, asked questions. They were furious. And after a back and forth between the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the funeral home, both saying, well, we gave the body with the organs, and the other saying, well, we received the body without the organs. They ended up saying that, well, the organs were unfortunately discarded because of deterioration, which also doesn't really make sense because he was found about less than 24 hours after he was in the mat. So the lungs and all the other organs deteriorated that quickly? A little strange. So the parents sued. And when they sued, they were told by investigators that while it wasn't a best practice, it wasn't illegal for the body to be stuffed with newspaper. So even after that grim discovery, they were still able to come to a determination as to what happened to Kendrick. And what they found contradicts what the first autopsy report said. Because remember, that first report said that Kendrick passed away from suffocation. But no, what they found is that Kendrick actually passed away from blunt force trauma. Yes, blunt force trauma. And they were able to use bones as well as his tissue to come to that conclusion. So now the question is, who did it? And for many, the answer has been there all along. So I'm going to mention two names to you. And the names I'm going to mention are names that have come up in the investigation. So these names have come up on the criminal side as investigators were looking into this case. And they've also come up on the civil side because the parents have sued many because they want to get justice for their son. So many believe that the names I'm going to mention, are somehow connected, if not responsible, for Kendrick's death. But I want to also say, I have to give a disclaimer because these names have been mentioned by a magazine before, a prominent magazine that we all know, Ebony Magazine, and the family of these boys, they sued for defamation. And I do not have Ebony money. So I just want to be clear that everything is allegedly, and I'm just telling a story of what happened, and I have to get both sides. I would be very irresponsible not to tell you about these boys because their name has continued to pop up. Even if you just Google Kendrick's name, these are the only people who have been tied to the other side of what people think happened. because again, investigators have been steadfast in this was just a freak accident. So, let me tell you about the Bell brothers. So, it all starts off in 2011, and this was also put in the police report. I've read all of it. So, if you're interested, I will put it in the links below and you can take a look as well. So, in that police report, it says that Kendrick and one of the brothers, Brian, were on their way to a game. And on the way to this game, they get into some type of physical altercation. Yes, fists were thrown. So that resulted in Kendrick and Brian not being able to ride back to the school. And I believe, Kendrick's parents weren't at the game, so he had to ride back with the school resource officer. So he wasn't back a police cruiser. While Brian, whose parents were at the game, he was able to ride back with them. Now, in that same police report, they're saying that, well, that was it, that they ended up squashing it, and they even worked on a school project together after, so all was well. However, according to Kendrick's family, all was not well. So in a documentary called Finding Kendrick Johnson, which was awesome, his father tells a story of how after this fight, Kendrick told him that the other brother, Brandon, or Brendan, with an E at the end, rather than an A, so Brendan Bell, he approached Kendrick and he said this wasn't over. And also, the father, yes, the father, Rick Bell, also approached Kendrick a little bit after that, and he told Kendrick that it wasn't a fair fight and that he should pull up to their house to shoot the fair ones. So come do a fair fight. Yes. And let me not forget to mention that his father is an FBI agent, which is why many speculate that this case was doomed from the start. An FBI agent. Yes, yes, yes. So, that's not the end. So, also, what ends up happening is maybe a few years later, and not too long after, right? So, that fight was in 2011. Kendrick is, unfortunately deceased in 2013. Well, after that, some anonymous email was sent to investigators. And this email came and said that they allegedly know what happened to Kendrick, and they named the brothers again. Take a look at this email. And in this email, a lot of the names are redacted, but you can take a wild guess as to who they're talking about. So I'm going to read you some of it. And it basically says that she told my friend what really happened to Kendrick Johnson. Blank said that about a little over a year ago, she had sexual intercourse with Kendrick Johnson while she was dating Blank. Blank found out and threatened KJ. KJ told Blank to meet him in the old gym after 3rd block and he would have his knife ready. Blank and Blank, who had just transferred back to LHS, met KJ and killed him. Blank has also been heard admitting to killing KJ more than once over the phone. His brother, Blank, also got drunk at a party on the 4th of July and told many people that Blank killed KJ and that he, Blank, was tired of keeping it a secret. So police claim that they looked into it. So they say that they tracked down the person who sent the email, even though it was anonymous, and they said that this was not a first-hand account, that it was rumors, it was hearsay. They even found the young woman who was being referred to in the email, who I believe was in the email said to be a girlfriend of one of the brothers, and the reason why there was this whole fight in the first place. And she says that no, she didn't have relations with Kendrick, and police say that they also looked into cell phone records and they didn't see communication, so they let that email go. But that wasn't the end, because the brothers' names came up again. This time, there was a sworn witness account. And this witness says that he had met one of the brothers in 2016, and the brother had spoke about what happened. And the brother said that, yeah, his younger brother killed Kendrick. And he even added a little more. He said that the brother told him that he used a 45-pound weight to do it. So remember, the autopsy that was done during the independent investigation said that there was some type of blunt force trauma. 45-pound weight, blunt force trauma. You see where I'm going? So, they also say that this witness said that the brother told them that the father was an FBI agent and basically helped sweep this whole thing under the rug. And he spoke about the cameras, which we'll get into in a second. We will get into the cameras. The person comes forward, but police, again, they say that, well, this wasn't true. They end up looking into timestamps and records, and they said that basically this witness wasn't credible. But it's kind of weird because after this witness came forward, maybe a little shortly after, that witness was arrested for criminal trespassing and was held without bond. And take a look at this post that was from Kendrick's mom back in 2017. See the post? She says that, well, this was some type of witness tampering, because what do you mean that he was held without bond for criminal trespassing? That's not normal. So investigators say that they did look into the brothers thoroughly and found that they had nothing to do with this. They say that on the day that Kendrick went missing, and during that time specifically, one brother was on his way to a wrestling match, and the other brother, Brian, he was actually on the other side of the school. So the brothers also maintain their innocence. They did an interview with WSB TV, which is a local news affiliate in Atlanta, where they spoke to a reporter and even went as far to say that Kendrick was one of their really close friends. And they also said something else. They said that they did not see Kendrick that day. One brother in particular, though, looked into the camera and said that. Again, he said he did not see Kendrick that day. Take a look.
I was in class, first block, second block, third block, and fourth block.
Close to the gym?
No.
Did you see Kendrick that day?
No. I did not.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm not tripping. You guys all heard him say that, right? You guys all heard Brian say that he did not see Kendrick that day. Well, I point this out because that was later found not to be true. An independent filmmaker found footage that was not released, which actually showed that Kendrick and Brian did see each other that day. They actually saw each other that morning. You see this video right here? That's Kendrick right there with a yellow folder in his hand. And that young man behind him, that's Brian Bell. So why did he lie? Maybe he just, benefit of the doubt, didn't remember? I don't know. Which brings me to my next point of contention, the cameras. Yes, the cameras. So allegedly, the school was equipped with a lot of different cameras all throughout the campus, and they were able to capture Kendrick walking through halls throughout the day, as well as the moment Kendrick went into the gym. Now, the gym was also equipped with 4 cameras, right? But for some reason, the cameras are missing several crucial moments that would have been very helpful in this case. And till this day, investigators have maintained that there hasn't been any foul play when it comes to the cameras. So another point that others have brought up has to do with what police had put in their report. So in that report, they say that there were people in the gym who witnessed Kendrick on top of the mats. Well, many ask, well, if people witnessed Kendrick on the mats, why didn't anyone witness or say that they heard him screaming or struggling in any way? Because you would assume if someone got stuck in a mat that they would make some type of noise, right? So he was just silent? So you guys are starting to get a better understanding of why many believe that there is something a little more sinister at play here when it comes to Kendrick Johnson's case. But let me bring to you something else. And this has to do with how many people have stepped away from this case. Let's start with federal prosecutor Michael Moore. So he was a federal prosecutor in Central Georgia, and he had reopened the case. And as he was looking into it, he suddenly stepped down. He took another job, right? You following? So after he steps down, literally in the middle of the investigation, all of his cases were given to his successor, except for Kendrick's. Kendrick's case was moved to Ohio. Now keep following. So Kendrick's case is now being looked into by an attorney in Ohio, and the U.S. attorney is looking into it, and he also steps down in the middle of the investigation. So now that's two stepping down. Now, okay, they got other jobs. Maybe it's nothing, but I could see why people think that's a little strange. So ultimately, that case was closed again, and they found that there wasn't enough evidence. Another point I want to bring to you has to do with when the family filed a civil suit against the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office. 7 judges recused themselves from the case. They didn't want to preside over it. 7, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7. Again, you now understand why some people think that there's something a little strange here. 7 plus 2 state attorneys? Okay. So, as I had mentioned to you all earlier, this case has been closed and reopened and closed and reopened again on a local, state, as well as federal level. And one of the last times it was opened on the local level was in 2021. And this time, Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk looked into it. He said that he wanted to, bring fresh eyes to the case. And he says that he did a thorough investigation. He looked, and then found again that there was nothing criminal that had happened. And he stands on the fact that he believes that this was truly just an accident. He also released his investigation in a 16-page report, which I can also link for you all below. And in this report, he also addressed all the different rumors that were circulating. And I say rumors because that's what he referred to them as. And that has to do with the email that was sent. It also talks about the Bell brothers and so forth. So the case, again, like I said, was closed. Till this day, there have not been any criminal charges filed in this case. But the family has still been fighting for the truth and for justice. There's actually an update there as of just last month. Yes, February 2025. Let me bring you back, though, to 2023 to give you a little bit more context. So, in 2023, the family filed a lawsuit against investigators, citing that their civil rights had been violated because public records were kept from them. They also filed 2 amended complaints. Are you following? So, one of those complaints was actually dismissed by a judge that the family had actually asked to recuse herself from the case, citing bias. So, now here comes the update. So, as of February 2025, the Court of Appeals found that, okay, the judge was well within her right to not recuse herself. However, they should probably relook into the dismissal. So, that now is being sent to a lower court for review. So, it's not over yet. It truly isn't over yet. So as y'all know, I am a victim-first storyteller, meaning during my process, it's very important that I try to connect with the victim's family. So I did try to reach out to Kendrick Johnson's family and have not yet heard back. However, if I do hear back and there is an update that I need to make to the story, I'll make sure that I do that. I also want to share that his mom is very active on social media. She has an Instagram page, Kendrick Johnson 17, where she shares a lot of different updates. Also, there was a foundation started, the Kendrick Johnson Foundation, where they also post updates. So you can make sure that you follow the mom or head to the website to learn more. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe. I will be dropping these type of stories on a weekly basis. Thank you guys again. We'll chat soon. I am OhShutUpTrisha. Have a great evening.